I'm Matt, founder and CEO of LiveSchool, and this is the LiveSchool podcast. Our guest today is Nikki Murchison, principal at Bonlee School, and that's down in Bonlee, North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Let's just kind of start off with it. I know it's your second year in your current school. What challenges brought you and the leadership team to want to implement sort of a digital shared tool for positive behavior reinforcement?
Yeah, so we wanted a systematic way to reward students with the same currency school-wide. We had our guidelines for success the first year. Those were developed before I got here, but we didn't have a way to kind of track how we reinforce those behaviors and how we could do that kind of seamlessly and fluently across the school, whether they were in the hallway with the music teacher or in the lunchroom with someone that was on duty. So we looked at different platforms to see kind of what would work best for us. And our school leadership team looked at a couple of different platforms, and we went with LiveSchool.
And of course, rolling out a new system can be kind of a lot. What was the approach of you and the leadership team? How did you approach, everything from teacher buy-in to coming up with what sorts of incentives would work and all the many, many decisions that go into it?
Sure. So the school leadership team has representatives from grade spans. We're a K-8 school, so we're a little bit unique. So we have representatives. We have also a representative for our classified staff and our specialist teachers. So anytime we have meetings, they go back and either inquire with them, hey, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? Or they'll go back and just kind of be the ambassador, I guess. That's kinda how we got buy-in. Everyone recognized that we needed something that was school-wide, that it wasn't gonna replace what they did in their classrooms, but it was a way for us to incentivize kids and to have, school-wide rewards, and that's been, I think a big factor in the student buy-in too. So we have, SUSUP has, helped me just kinda think that through. So one of our the first reward was a gaming truck, which I had never seen, but the kids were super excited. So kids that had a certain number of points got to go spend so much time in the gaming truck, and that was something that most kids earned. So everyone seems to be in a good place. It's not perfect. Some people use it more than others. We're still calibrating those kinds of things. But all in all, I think it served the purpose of giving us a system to reward and collect data.
That's great. So the gaming truck, how does that work? Is it like different board games and things like that students get to play, or what does
Yeah,
it look like?
it's super cool. It's like a trailer. This gentleman pulls behind his truck, and there are screens on the outside and
Uh-huh.
screens on the inside, and all of the controllers. And then they had different games that were you could do based on age or appropriateness. And then the kids, I want to say they had a 45-minute block where they got to just play those games. And then he has this big checkerboard, not checkerboard, Connect Four. Um,
Uh-huh.
he had beanbag toss, so they just got to
Oh, that's
time.
so cool.
Yeah, they were super excited. Our next one is going to be a pep rally, so we'll see how the next one goes.
Fantastic. So it's like a carnival on wheels, and this is just a local person who comes by and helps get kids
Mhm.
excited. Wow, that is so neat. So, what would you say has been most popular with students so far? Has it been? It sounds like that's been the main attraction.
I think for the big kind of end of 9 weeks reward,
Mm-hmm.
we're really super excited about that. As far as like you know weekly rewards, I have to say the principal Uber has been highly, highly popular, and it's nice. It doesn't cost a thing except your time.
Uh
Um,
huh.
but especially in the lower grades, the kids really tend to like that. Or the principal for a day has been really popular too.
Ah, interesting. Both
Yes,
of these involve you directly, correct?
I do. Yes.
As the principal.
It's a good. I mean, it is. It does take time, but at the same time, it's a good way to positively interact with the kids. It's not. You just have to kind of schedule it in the day, and it so far I haven't had to cancel any of them. So I have to get help from.
Any important meetings due to? Sorry, I have to. Can you explain for anyone who doesn't know what is Principal Uber? Because some people might be envisioning, do you go pick students up for school? What does that look like?
That's a good point. No, so anytime a student leaves their classroom for like big things like whether they're going to lunch or they're going to specials, maybe recess, I usually get 2 or 3 Ubers throughout the day. We'll go and I'll take my chair, the office chair, and we will go to their classroom. They get to hop in, and then we will literally push them to wherever their designation is. It just kind of depends. And then, sometimes we might go a little faster than others, and it depends on the kid. But they really do seem to like the special treatment too.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that's the most popular. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
How has your team come up with these? I know you mentioned just chatting with our team, but I think that's one of the biggest challenges that schools sometimes face is just trying to figure out what will kind of click for students. Has there been any special sauce, or just sitting around and being really creative and goofy and coming up with these, or how have you done it?
Um, no special sauce. Sometimes kids will recommend something. They'll say, have
Mm,
you thought about X, Y, or Z?" I think the bank on LiveSchool has really helped. There's tons
great.
of ideas there. So shout out to that. Some things that we did a survey with our middle schoolers last year, just because they seem to
Mm,
be motivated a little bit differently than our elementary
yeah,
kids,
of course. Yeah.
and tried to work some of those things in there too. And if a kid, I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of an example of something that a kid has said, but I know kids have come up to me and I'm like, yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can think of one now. Sorry. We have basketball, we have sports. So there's like a 1 hour window after school before the sports begin, and kids
Mm.
want to stay, but they want to stay unsupervised, which is not okay. So
Ah.
we have put that on our menu of things that they can earn if they want to stay for that hour until the sporting event begins. They can use their life school points to do that with
Huh.
the approval of an adult.
That is really creative. And I'm sure for students, it's kind of a cool feeling to know, oh, I suggest that to the principal and now, now we can earn it, or it's
Yeah,
pretty nice. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's all the fun stuff. But of course, your students are working really hard, and I'm sure there's a lot of expectations for them academically and behaviorally. What are some of the things that your team has chosen to really focus on in terms of expectations for students?
I would have to say, coming into the new year, and something that we've always struggled with is cafeteria. Um, so just because it's a small cafeteria, and it sounds like everything just reverberates off of the walls.
Yeah.
Um, Previous principal tried music, but then it got so loud that you couldn't even hear the music.
Right.
Um, so we are in the phases of implementing a house competition
Mm.
to incentivize our students to follow our guidelines for success, what we expect in the cafeteria. We were going to jump it off, but we've had some different setbacks with closings because we haven't had
Mm.
a
Yeah.
staff meeting, and I don't want to roll it out to kids before I really tell staff what it's about.
Yeah. Of course.
Uh, and I'm still working with SUSEP to kind of work out some kinks in kind of how we do it. But I would say that that's been a focus as of the new year. We knew we were going to come in and try to work on our on cafeteria.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I know you also have both positives, of course, you're reinforcing positives, but you also do document or track the negatives. How have you kind of found the balance of keeping a positive system that's motivating students, but also having some accountability and some expectations on that side? How have you approached that?
Yeah. So the first 9 weeks, like you said, we can give demerits, but it's on the report that goes home at the end of each week to the kids, so they can see it there. But it didn't take away, nor do we want it to take away from what they earn. So the first 9 weeks, like I said, with the gaming truck, that was the reward. We didn't really factor in demerits. We just said, as long as you have this amount, and we kind of calibrated that, you can earn the gaming truck. And then teachers came back and said, well, the demerits really, um, I don't want to say they're not motivating, but the kids don't really like when you give it to them. They're like, okay, well, so
Yeah,
what?
it doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything. So then we said that we would look at a ratio for the next incentive. We had a mini
Mm.
incentive in December with snow cones. So it was more of the ratio ideally, right, is five, I think 5 to 1, five positives for
Hmm.
every negative. So each grade level um, came up with a ratio of positive to negative. And if you had more, if your ratio was not what the expectation was, then you didn't earn the reward.
Hmm.
If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. So as a student, if I had 10, just picking a number, 10 positives, but I had three negatives, that would be below that 5-to-1 ratio. And I wouldn't lose my points. I just can't spend them this time. Is that right?
Yeah, they can spend their points. They just wouldn't earn like the big reward, right?
Got it.
So your ratio has to be whatever we're working out the kinks with that. We're getting ready to
Of
go to
course.
our
Yeah.
board. But your ratio has to be within the expected amount. And
Hmm.
we calibrate that across the school because we're still trying to calibrate points across the school.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so we're working on that.
Yeah. It sounds like there's some trial and error, of course, but you're trying to find that right balance so that it stays positive and motivating, but there is also some like the demerits do mean something to students.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, I know, and for anyone who's curious, you've been mentioning Susep. That's a member of the LiveSchool team who's a wonderful thought partner. And he actually mentioned to me that you all were brainstorming ways to recognize students for practicing their testing strategies before the break. How has that been going? Has your team been able to get that off the ground?
Yeah, so we have check-ins, and they are
Hmm.
once a 9 weeks. So our next check-ins are coming mid-February. That was
Hmm.
for our first check-in, and we wanted to reward students, and we tallied as they were testing. We kept tally sheets, but then we needed to figure out a way, and it was very easy to put that as a guideline for success, if that's what you
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
call it. So you can go in there. We know that we can do it, but we haven't done it yet for this next round of check-ins. But students, instead of just saying we're checking to see if you're doing your, folding your paper so you can box in your
Sure.
different answers, instead of just checking it, they're going to get a certain number of LiveSchool points. So we went into our reward system. It was so easy because we just had to set up: are they doing whatever our expectations is, whether it's folding their paper or whether it's reading the questions first or whatever the strategy is that we have taught
Yeah.
them, and then they will get points based on the strategies that they use. So that will come in February. So we'll have to do this again, and I'll tell you how it goes.
Great. Well, it's neat to see that you're sort of figuring out other ways that what you've put in place. You can connect the dots with other initiatives. That's great to hear. Um, I mean, I have to say, it seems like you've been pretty hands on as a principal in figuring all of this out. I'm sure you're really busy and have a lot on your plate. I'm just curious, like for another principal, what would you say in terms of why it's felt important to spend time, creating these positive systems and spending time trying to, pushing kids on chairs as a principal Uber. Like, how have you put that on your priority list?
Yeah, well, I think if we want teachers to buy into it and to use it, and we want kids to buy into it, I think it's really important for them to see you as the leader of the school be a part of it.
Hmm.
Whether that's pushing a kid in a chair down a hallway,
Yep.
which is fun, and they can tweet it out, and that's also good, just um, uh, good for the school, but also good
Yeah.
for community to see
Yeah.
um, on social media. So, and this is kind of I don't want to say I don't know if passion is the word, but the importance of us this being a place that is positive, that we're
Mm.
not just focusing on all the things that kids aren't doing that we want them to do, which we know is not nearly as effective as pointing out the kids that are doing the right thing and praising them for when they are doing it. So that's really
Hmm.
important for me philosophically, and like just
Yeah.
what I want the school to look like. So that was a big incentive for me to be a part of that too, to give teachers a way to, to make positive connections with kids and to
Yeah.
recognize the
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely leading by example when you're pushing that chair. And I can imagine that's also building buzz, right? Because maybe for the student who wasn't as focused or on, trying to earn points, or the teacher who wasn't as bought in, it just gives them that extra fun, touch point during the day.
For
So
sure.
that's yeah.
The kids come up in the hall and they will ask, "Did my teacher, did she email you about the Uber? When's my Uber gonna be?" I'm, like, booked out till next week, so with Day or Uber, or I do have an assistant principal here 3 days a week, so when she's here, she's a big help too. So
Oh,
it's
that's
not,
great.
and I can enlist others, if needed, but, I like to try to do it, if I can, if something's not pressing.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I mean, it's probably a fun break from, some of the more serious things that you're doing day to day.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned social media. I am just curious to ask about that. It's something that's been coming up a lot as we're talking to different administrators across the country, especially post COVID. I know you said you're K-8, so I'm just curious what that's looking like. Is that something that's coming up quite a bit for you all, or not so much in terms of the influence on students and things like that?
I think from a behavioral perspective, I'm gonna knock on some wood. I haven't had
Yeah. Okay.
a lot. There have been some, but
Hmm.
not a lot of things that have come to school. Unless it happened at school, if it doesn't come to school and become a disturbance, then, typically I'm not involved. So I guess in a sense, there's no doubt that social media is impacting kids. I mean, because many of them are on it a lot.
Yeah.
But as far as school, um, I haven't. It hasn't been a huge issue. Now I'm going to speak something into it
Yeah.
tomorrow, but there have been a couple of occasions. But parents have been, they can readily get the phones and look at it, and they can, yes,
Hmm.
it happened, or yes, they did this. So for the most part, when we have those issues, the parents have been supportive. But it
Okay.
does help us on
That's
a
great.
positive. It helps us reach a much wider base. I put out a s'more every week, and I bet we have like 300 kids, and I usually average about 500 hits on the
Oh,
s'more
wow.
because it's on
What's
all
this
these.
more? Sorry. Oh, is that like a little bulletin or yeah, okay.
It's a newsletter.
Yeah.
It's a digital newsletter, but it will
Yeah.
automatically translate into all these different languages. But we put it on Twitter, we put it on Facebook, we put it on, whatever.
Yeah.
And well,
People
somebody
really check it out.
it
Yeah.
may not be my parents, but
That's
somebody. Yeah,
that's great. That is really great. Well, I'd
yeah.
love to wrap up with some bigger picture questions, if that's okay. I love asking administrators this. And the first one is just sort of a debate, you might say, in education between sort of more intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So, on the one hand, we all want to get better as people and just love that feeling of learning something new, and that's the intrinsic side. But then the extrinsic, we all like being rewarded and recognized. And I'm just curious, in your experience, what you've come to see in terms of maybe which one's more important, or the balance, or how they go together. How do you think about that?
We talk a lot about this. You know, our students are extrinsically motivated by majority. I mean, hands down.
Mm,
But we talk about, especially in middle school, just the lack of, and this is I'm generalizing, right? But just
sure,
the
of course.
apathy can come to mind. Just the lack of motivation, even if it's something sometimes even extrinsic. I mean, I'm not just talking about I myself am not motivated, but this is not motivating for me, which is one of the reasons we did the survey, just to see, okay, well,
Hmm.
what is it that middle schoolers really want? And middle schoolers are unique, so it's a kind of a different breed.
Yeah.
We also have forced choice surveys. That's more for individual kids, more than it is
Mm,
for the whole school. That kind of helps us determine, is it a tangible thing that they want? Is it just an
mm,
approval? It just depends, but that's more for problem solving. But it is definitely something that, we struggle with in terms of incentivizing kids to just want it. Our motto, not our motto, our mission statement has the words student agency. So we say that every
mm,
morning. We talk about, what does that mean to have
yeah.
agency? So, and we, teachers will use it in the classroom, and sometimes kids will refer to it too. But it is a challenge for them to
Yeah.
be physically motivated.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's definitely a process, and there's probably small wins along the way. I mean, it sounds like there's been some great student voice so far in terms of the survey last year, and then even students suggesting some of the rewards that are popular today. So it's just kind of rolling that snowball, I guess, and trying to foster it in the culture. But I think that's pretty universal that middle school students are a little harder to figure out.
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely true. It is different than elementary kiddos.
And just as a final question, if you could put up a billboard that every principal would see on their way to work in the morning, I'm curious if there's a message that you've picked up along the way that you really resonate with that you would want to share.
Specific, I mean, we're talking about specific to. using
Yeah,
LiveSchool.
yeah, it could be about motivating student or reaching students. It doesn't have to be, so specific to.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so let me think about this for a minute.
yeah,
I mean, I just go back I think about the positivity. I can't come up with anything catchy right now. Um,
hashtag positivity.
but hashtag positivity, or have you ever been motivated when when someone talks about the things that you're doing wrong, or does
Mm,
someone yelling motivate you? What motivates you is when people recognize the things that you're doing that they're doing well.
mhm.
So maybe it's like what motivates you, hashtag positivity or something like that. Because no one
Hey,
likes
I think that's a pretty good billboard. Yeah, just that reminder that I think we all need when we get locked in on, our own thoughts that, the best way to communicate, the best way to get someone excited and motivated is more to focus on what excites them than saying what they're doing wrong or something. It is a reminder, I think, especially when you're dealing with, the day-to-day pressure in a school that's so important. I think that's a great billboard. Well, thank you so much for joining the Live School podcast. It's really exciting to hear what your school's been up to already in its first year, and hopefully, as houses kick in and continuing to layer in different parts and pieces, just build that positivity to steal your steal your
great.
word.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
we have really we've really enjoyed it, and it's really brought us, I think, more systematicity at the school. So
Mm.
we're looking forward, like you said, to honing how we use it and how well we use it. So more to come.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us.
All right. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.